Yep.
Good evening, friends and family. Tonight, our story comes from Cheri Ellen Strand Burnett, entitled The Story of the Burdett Organ from Wilmer, Minnesota. I don't know when the Burdett organ was made. There is no visible date on it. Maybe someone in Candy, Ohio County can research and find out. Smiley face. I think it may be at least 100 years old. What I do know is that the label above the keyboard reads Burdett Organ, F.W. Segerstrom, Wilmer, Minnesota. Now, I know it's an important town for those reading this story. It was an important town for my family, too, because my great-great-grandmother's family, the Trogans, lived in a big white house in Wilmer, Minnesota in 1912, and the Burdett organ was in that house many years. You can see the Trogan family and house in the big picture at the Atwater Museum in Wilmer. There is a great-great-grandmother, Anna Trogan, with her daughter Matilda Trogan Christensen on the left, with her children Harold Wallace, age 3, and Florence Jeanette, age 1.5, and Tilda's brothers Arvid and William Willie Trogan on the right. Now, although Harold and Florence were born and lived in Bird Island nearby, they loved to visit their Grandma Anna on the Trogan farm, and they especially loved their Uncle Willie. Anna must have loved music, for she first delivered the Burdett organ from F.W. Segerstrom in Wilmer and had it delivered to her house. It used to be a dark brown wood color and had a large headpiece as tall as the organ itself, with a large mirror in the middle. Anna certainly passed her love of music on to Harold and Florence, for Harold learned to play the harmonica, then the guitar in his teens, so he could play along and sing the songs that his family heard on the Grand Ole Opry radio program every Saturday night. Florence surely spent many hours at the Burdett organ, for even after she was grown and moved from her home, she always had a piano or organ in her house, and she would dress up in a long gown and play for family as if she was giving a great concert at the Carnegie Hall. At Christmas time, her pianos always had the sheet music for Silver Bells displayed on it. Aunt Florence was my first Sunday school teacher at Pate Avenue Baptist Church in St. Paul, where all our family attended when I was 5 years old in 1957. She would read Bible stories and taught us to sing all the happy Sunday school songs. Here is a picture of Harold and Florence as children in 1914, then of each of them as adults. Anne Trogan lived a long life, 1839 to 1934, and was cared for in her old age by her bachelor son Willie, who stayed in the Wilmer home after Anna passed. Matilda had another son, Donald, in 1922, but she died of cancer 1876 to 1932, when he was only 10 years old. Donald would spend many happy hours, when not in school, with his Uncle Willie on the farm. It was a favorite spot for all the family, for picnics and family gatherings. Donald also acquired a love for music from his Grandma Anna and his mother Tilda, for he learned to play guitar. And when he joined the Army in World War II, he brought his harmonica with him so he could play popular songs for his comrades. One of his favorite songs was San Antonio Rose. Harold Christensen loved fishing as much as he loved music, and when a friend told him of a lake in the Boundary Waters where he could catch a stringer full of fish every day, he had to check it out. He brought his wife Eunice and his 2 daughters Colleen and Jackie with him, and they rented a cabin by Lake Cabotogama for the week. Harold's friend was right. After Harold and Eunice and the girls went fishing for one day, they had a stringer of walleye and northern pike 4 feet wide that took 2 strong men to hold it up for a picture. And each fish was at least 3 feet long. After the fish were cleaned and packed in the trailer's ice chest for the night, Harold would pull out his guitar and play for Eunice and the girls until it was time for bed. Besides fishing, Eunice loved to teach Bible stories and songs. She was active in the Child Evangelism Organization, so while they were staying at the lake for the week, She would knock on all the doors of the cabins and invite the children to come to her Good News Club in the afternoon. She and the children would dress as if going to real church, and she would read Bible stories and teach the children all the Sunday school songs she knew. After several summers at Lake Cabotogama, Harold and Eunice decided to build their own cabin by the lake. They found a large, flat granite rock covered with moss and surrounded by pine trees, and there they built their small wooden cabin with brown shingle siding in 1950. Over the next few summers, Harold and Eunice, their daughters Colleen and husband Bob Larson, and their children Lynn, Jim, and Phil, and their other daughter Jackie and husband Wally Strand, and children Linda, Wally Jr., and myself, Cheri Ellen, would spend hours swinging on the tire swing in front of the cabin or playing tag around the house. "But watch out for bears," said Grandma Eunice. It was always fun to be at the Cabotogama cabin in the Great North Woods. In 1957, the whole family celebrated Harold's birthday at their large Victorian house on Burr Street in St. Paul, Minnesota on June 30th. Grandpa Harold, who worked his whole life at Swift's meatpacking plant, was 48 years old. All the grandkids took turns sitting on Grandpa's lap and sang as he blew out his candles on the cake. 3 days later, July 3rd, it was my birthday, and Grandma and Grandpa gave me 2 real white Peking ducks. What a wonderful present. Then they drove to Cabotogama cabin to spend the 4th of July week in the nice cool woods. The early morning of July 7th, Eunice suddenly woke up, and she reached out her hand to touch Harold's. It was cool to her touch. He had died in his sleep of a sudden heart attack in the place he loved more than anywhere else in the world. When they heard the news, my dad and Uncle Bob rode on the train from the St. Paul depot to International Falls, where they hugged Grandma as they sat on the train bringing Grandpa's body back to St. Paul and Payne Avenue, where a service was to be held. In the window of the funeral home was Grandpa's hat he always wore fishing, and his favorite fishing pole. Grandma was not crying. She told all of us grandchildren, Grandpa is in heaven now with Jesus, and is happily looking down on all of us. My mother and Aunt Christy were crying. We children all went over to them and said, Mommy, why are you crying? Grandma said that Grandpa is in heaven. Talk about childlike faith. We always believed everything that Grandma said because she never told a lie. From the time she gave her heart to Jesus and was saved at a corner revival meeting under their apartment in 1932, she always lived in a way that would let the sun shine in and show people that she loved Jesus. Until Grandma Eunice died in 1971, she never stopped holding child evangelism classes, and she would give a Gospel of John to everyone she met and told them about the Lord Jesus. Harold's sudden death apparently was traumatic to her sister Florence. She kept his picture close in her wallet in her purse. Don was exactly 13 years younger than his brother Harold, and exactly 13 years after Harold died on July 7th, 1970. No, not Don, but Don's son William, Billy Christensen, the only namesake to carry on the Christensen name, was killed in a helicopter crash in Vietnam where he was the door gunner. The pilot, a general, and another soldier died with him, and their names are all on the Great Black Vietnam Memorial Wall in Washington, D.C. Just this past week, as I was helping my brother Junior clean out my mother's house, I found Florence's wallet. It had pictures of brother Harold and Don in it, and pictures of Billy too. On the back of Billy's it said, "A wonderful boy, died July 7th, 1957. Well, that date of July 7th was so traumatic she mistakenly wrote the year of Harold's death on Billy's picture. Donald lived much longer than Harold, and he always loved to hear the song San Antonio Rose. But one morning in 1986, when he was 64, his wife Lillian heard a noise in the kitchen. She went in, and Donald was laying on the floor. Just like older brother Harold, he had died of a sudden heart attack. Aunt Christy and Jackie had to go tell her Aunt Florence, who was in a Baptist nursing home since her sudden stroke at age 64 in 1975. She cried at the news that her baby brother had gone so suddenly. The next year, our precious Aunt Florence passed away too, September 26, 1987, at almost 77 years of age. I've wandered away from the Burdett organ in my story, but now we will return to it. William, Uncle Willie Trogan, kept the organ in his home in Wilmer until he passed away. He lived from 1879 to 1955, and he passed away at the age of 76. The organ was then given to my mother, Mary Jackie Strand, Willie's great niece, and it came to stay at our home in an old farm across the street from the St. Paul Waterworks and the attached WPA Park from 1955 to 1966. Uncle Willie's dog Billy came to stay with us too. He was a gentle collie German Shepherd mix, and he guarded our property until he died in 1960. The tall headpiece was stored in our basement, where it eventually molded apart from the dirt floor. Only the mirror survived. As I think my mother thought we might climb in the organ and it would tip over. The organ itself was moved into the bedroom that I shared with my sister Linda. We would each take turns playing on the organ. Because my mother had recently gotten a 78 record of George Beverly Shea singing How Great Thou Art, I tried to pick it out on the organ with one finger as I pumped the pedals. My mother thought I did a very good job of it, and she even wrote it down in my baby book. Here's a picture of me playing the organ in my bedroom at 59 West Center Street. There really was no street, just our driveway. And for many years, until we put up a mailbox in a long driveway, we got our mail at the end of the entry road to the Waterworks on Rice Street. And then around 1960, my mother decided the organ looked too dark and sad. So she used some blonde antique paint, 2 tones, to repaint the organ, as well as an old radio my father made into a cabinet with sliding doors. Here I am again now in front of the blonde Burdett organ with my parrot model sitting on it. We were happy in our house on Center Street. 2 years after we got the organ, my father finally put in a real bathroom with a toilet and a tub onto the house, and I helped him dig the foundation with my little shovel. However, in 1966, when I was 14, I learned the meanings of the words eminent domain. It meant that we, and everyone at the south end of our street for a whole mile, had to move away to make room for potential expansion of the waterworks. They put a big metal fence around the park, which after the years looked like a real-life Narnia, complete with old light posts and some dry stone fountains. They did not actually fence off the waterworks itself until September 11th, 2001. We also learned you do not take the first offer of compensation from the government. My parents had little money, but in order to get justice, they hired a lawyer who worked in the insurance building where Aunt Florence worked, and they were able to get enough money to buy another house, one originally built in 1928 and remodeled in 1955, at 2452 North Germain Street, still in Maplewood, Minnesota. The Burdett organ was moved there, and except for one trip in the fall of 1969 when it was taken to our Faith Baptist Church by I-35E for Old Fashioned Sunday and was played by the song leader's wife, Doris Huckins, who pumped the pedals and played until the whole church rang with the sound, the Burdett organ stayed in the little red and white house. After we moved to North Germain Street and a new Four Seasons Park was built behind our property because Maplewood needed a new park after the other was fenced off, I still played the organ from time to time. So did my younger brothers and sisters, Nathan, Lisa, and Jared, who all took piano lessons after I went away to college. My mother, Jackie, had a love of music handed down to her from Pa, Harold, her grandmother, Tilda, and great-grandmother, Anna, as well as her Aunt Florence and Uncle Don. At a young age, Harold taught Jackie to play the guitar, and she also learned to play an instrument called a tipple. She often went with a boy in her class to sing songs and play music at different nursing homes and churches. She listened to the Grand Ole Opry and learned how to yodel so well that everyone had asked her to do a yodel song every time she sang and played her guitar. She had a good friend growing up named Joyce Reedy, who also played the guitar and sang, and as adults they often played at our Sunday school picnics at the waterworks parks. When I was in grade school, I was given violin lessons and learned to play quite well, so after I went to college, Mother Jackie got a violin and mandolin and an auto harp, and the younger 3 children took turns learning all the instruments. After all of us were grown and married and had children, we would often come to Grandma Jackie Strand's house where all the grandchildren would take turns playing on all the instruments, including the Burdett organ. My mother also sang songs and played her guitar and yodeled at the local picking group at the Methodist Church in Oakdale every month for the past 11 years. My mother, Jackie Strand, passed away peacefully this past December 6, 2016, at the age of 86 years and 6 months. I took my turn playing the Burdett organ 3 weeks ago, and my brother Nathan played a hymn on it just a few days ago. It still filled the house with a beautiful sound. The Burdett organ now belongs to the Atwater Historical Society near the town of Wilmer, where it was made and where so many of the Trogan family first heard its wonderful notes. I hope the organ has another happy 100 years and brings joy to all the people who see and play it. And there you have it, the life and history of the Burdett organ.